The evening sky over Earth glimmered with its usual serenity, a blanket of stars undisturbed by human eyes. That tranquility shattered as an alien dreadnought, a leviathan of black and gold, pierced the atmosphere. It hovered menacingly above the Atlantic Ocean, its silhouette eclipsing the moon. All across the globe, cities went dark as power grids scrambled under the electromagnetic interference of the intruder. Sirens blared and military forces mobilized, but it was clear Earth's defenses were insignificant against such a vessel. From the United Nations spire in New Geneva, humanity's top diplomats and leaders gathered in a tense emergency session. They watched in silence as a massive holographic projection lit up the chamber. An alien figure appeared, its form draped in crystalline robes that shimmered with every color of the spectrum. "I am High Arbitrator Vei Tun of the Galactic Union," the alien spoke, its voice resonating like a choir of deep bells. "By decree of the High Tribunal, the species known as Homo sapiens is hereby summoned to answer for crimes against the galaxy." The room erupted in confusion and protest. Adrienne Kane, Earth's ambassador to the Galactic Union, stepped forward. "What crime? We've upheld every treaty, every law since we joined the Union." Her voice was calm but firm, her steel blue eyes locked on the projection. Vei Tun's gaze was unyielding. "The destruction of the Dravian artifact, an irreplaceable keystone of galactic stability, has been traced to your kind. Evidence places a human vessel near the artifact moments before its obliteration." Kane felt a chill run down her spine. The Dravian artifact was a legendary construct, a relic of a long-extinct race. Its purpose was not fully understood, but its significance was undeniable. If humanity were to be blamed for its destruction, the consequences would be catastrophic. "You have 48 Earth hours to prepare your defense," Vei Tun continued. "Failure to comply will result in immediate expulsion from the Union and the imposition of sanctions. The tribunal awaits your arrival on Seraphon Prime." The projection flickered and vanished. Above them, the dreadnought ascended, disappearing into the void as swiftly as it had arrived. The room descended into chaos. Voices shouted over one another, and panic set in. Kane raised her hand, commanding silence. "Enough," she barked. The room quieted. "We don't have time for hysteria. If the tribunal wants a trial, we'll give them one." General Marcus Holt, head of Earth's defense forces, crossed his arms. "This smells like a setup. We've had no operations near the Dravian artifact. Why would they pin this on us?" Kane nodded. "Agreed, but we can't prove our innocence from here. I'll need full access to every ship's logs, every scrap of data." She turned to Dr. Ethan Sato, Earth's leading xenoengineer. "Ethan, you're coming with me. If anyone can debunk their tech evidence, it's you." As the clock ticked down, Kane's team assembled, aware that the fate of humanity rested on their shoulders. The trial of the century was about to begin. The transport ship, Aurora Ascendant, streaked through hyperspace, carrying Kane and her team towards Seraphon Prime. The silence on board was heavy as they reviewed the prosecution's case. Vera, Kane's eye assistant, projected the damning evidence in crisp holographic detail. A visual log flickered to life, showing the Dravian artifact, a colossal ring of shimmering silver and obsidian, floating in the void. Moments later, the hologram displayed a human freighter, Eos Horizon, appearing within range of the artifact. Then, a flash of light. The artifact disintegrated, leaving only an expanding cloud of cosmic debris. Dr. Ethan Sato frowned, his fingers flying across his data pad. "This doesn't add up," he muttered. The Eos Horizon was designed for cargo runs, not military operations. It doesn't have the firepower to even scratch something like the Dravian artifact. Kane nodded but kept her eyes on the evidence. "It's not about whether we did it. It's about making the tribunal believe we could have. We need to dismantle their narrative piece by piece." As they neared Seraphon Prime, the looming planet came into view. a gas giant with violent storms swirling across its surface. Above it floated the crystalline megacity where the High Tribunal was held, its spires gleaming like diamonds in the dark. When they disembarked, Kane and her team were escorted into the tribunal's grand chamber. The hall was vast, filled with representatives from hundreds of species, each seated in tiered rows overlooking the circular courtroom. At the center stood Prosecutor Zelthar, a towering figure from the Exeldrath species. His reptilian eyes gleamed with malice, his sharp-toothed grin exuding confidence. Zelthar began without preamble, his voice a deep, hissing growl that reverberated through the chamber. Esteemed members of the tribunal, we stand here today not merely to judge a single species, but to safeguard the very fabric of our galaxy. The evidence is irrefutable. Humanity's presence near the Dravian artifact coincided with its catastrophic destruction. A weapon of such magnitude could destabilize entire systems, and now it is gone, thanks to them. He gestured, and holograms appeared around him. The artifact's final moments, sensor logs from nearby ships, and the EOS Horizon's flight path. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the audience. Kane stood, her expression calm, but her voice sharp. The prosecution's case is built on a foundation of assumptions and manipulated data. Humanity may be young in galactic terms, but we do not possess the means to destroy a construct as ancient and advanced as the Dravian artifact. Zelthar's grin widened. Ah, but you had motive. Humans are ambitious, desperate to carve their place among the stars. What better way than to eliminate a symbol of galactic unity? Kane's gaze didn't falter. Motive without means is meaningless. We intend to prove that not only is humanity innocent, but someone else stands to gain from this crime. Judge Cutharn, an elder being whose translucent skin glowed faintly, raised a hand. The tribunal will hear both sides in full. But know this, the punishment for such a crime is severe. Proceed carefully. As the session adjourned, Kane turned to her team. This is more than a trial, she said. It's a game of power and survival, and we're playing against experts. The stakes had never been higher. The night on Seraphim Prime was unnervingly silent. Kane sat alone in her temporary quarters, the glow of her data terminal casting long shadows across the room. Lines of alien legal code and translated transcripts scrolled past her eyes, but her mind was elsewhere. Zelthar's confidence was too perfect, his evidence too convenient. He wasn't just prosecuting, he was orchestrating. Vera, Kane called, her voice barely above a whisper. Yes, Ambassador, the AI replied, materializing as a small holographic sphere hovering above the terminal. Reanalyze the EO's Horizon sensor logs, Kane said. Look for anomalies, anything that feels out of place, and cross-reference the log's encryption with the standard protocols. If these logs were tampered with, we need to know how. Understood, Vera said, its holographic form pulsing with activity. Analysis will take several hours. Kane leaned back, letting out a slow breath. The weight of humanity's fate pressed heavily on her shoulders. But before she could gather her thoughts, a sharp knock echoed through the room. Kane, it's Sato, came the familiar voice of Dr. Ethan Sato. She opened the door and Sato stepped in, his face tense. We have a problem, he said, handing her a portable data slate. I've been digging into the tribunal's records on the Dravian artifact. There's something they're not telling us. Kane scanned the data. It was a collection of ancient star maps, engineering blueprints, and cryptic notes from the Union's classified archives. What am I looking at? The artifact wasn't just a relic, Sato explained. It was an active stabilizer for subspace corridors in this sector. Whoever destroyed it didn't just damage a piece of history, they disrupted the entire galactic network. Trade routes, communication relays, even military deployments, everything could fall apart. Kane's eyes narrowed. So the motive isn't just symbolic, it's strategic. Sato nodded. Exactly, and there's more. Some of the blueprints indicate that the artifact had recently undergone repairs. But the logs are incomplete, like someone deliberately erased parts of the record. Before Kane could respond, Vera chimed in. Ambassador, I've completed the initial analysis. The sensor logs from the EU's horizon were altered. The encryption used is sophisticated, far beyond human capabilities. However, I detected a unique signature, one associated with the Zorthan Syndicate. Kane's heart raced. The Zorthans were notorious for their black market dealings and covert operations. If they were involved, this was more than a simple framing. It was a calculated power play. We need proof, Kane said. Solid, undeniable proof. Without it, the tribunal won't care about our theories. Sato hesitated. There's a Zorthan operative in the city. Tarek, he's a known whistleblower. If anyone can give us what we need, it's him. But getting to him won't be easy. The syndicate will have eyes everywhere. Kane's jaw tightened. Then we'll move carefully. Arrange a meeting. As Sato left to make preparations, Kane stared out at the glittering cityscape of Seraphon Prime. The shadows were growing longer, and the stakes were rising. She had no doubt now someone was playing a dangerous game, and if she wasn't careful, humanity would be its first casualty. For the first time in days, a flicker of determination crossed her face. Let's see how they handle the truth, she muttered to herself. The neon lights of Seraphon Prime's underbelly flickered as Kane and Sato made their way through the labyrinthine streets. Far below the crystalline spires of the tribunal, the city revealed a darker side, a sprawling network of shadow markets and hidden enclaves where the Union's laws were little more than suggestions. Tarek's location wasn't easy to find. He operated out of a secluded dive, a cantina known as the Obsidian Vale. The patrons were a mix of outlaws, traitors, and mercenaries from across the galaxy. Every glance in their direction felt like a potential threat. This place is charming, Sato muttered, his eyes scanning the room nervously. Kane's voice was steady. Focus. We're here for answers, not ambience. They spotted Tarek in a back booth, a lean Zorthan with iridescent scales that shimmered faintly in the dim light. He looked up as they approached, his slitted eyes narrowing. You're either brave or foolish to meet me here, Tarek said, his voice a low rasp. The syndicate doesn't take kindly to loose ends or their pursuers. Kane slid into the seat across from him, her tone unyielding. We don't have time for pleasantries, Tarek. We know the Zorthan Syndicate tampered with the EO's Horizons logs. I need hard evidence, something I can present to the tribunal. Tarek's gaze flicked between Kane and Sato. And why should I risk my neck for you? If the Syndicate finds out I've been talking, I'll be dead before I leave this booth. Kane leaned in, her voice low and firm. Because if humanity goes down for this, the Union will come after the Zorthans next. They'll unravel every secret your syndicate has ever tried to bury. Help us now, and I'll make sure the tribunal sees you as a hero, not a traitor. Tarek hesitated, then sighed. You don't understand how deep this goes. The artifact wasn't just destroyed. It was sabotaged as part of a deal between the syndicate and certain factions within the Union. They wanted the artifact out of the way to destabilize trade routes and seize control of key sectors. He pulled out a small data chip and slid it across the table. This contains communication logs between high-ranking syndicate operatives and an unknown Union official. It's encrypted, but it'll prove what you're looking for, if you can crack it. Before Kane could respond, the cantina's doors burst open. Syndicate enforcers, clad in black armor with glowing red visors, stormed in. The room erupted into chaos as patrons scrambled for cover. They found us, Tarek hissed, drawing a concealed blaster. We need to move. Now. Kane grabbed the data chip and nodded to Sato. Stay close. They ducked behind overturned tables as the enforcers opened fire. Tarek led them through a hidden exit, navigating the twisting back alleys with practiced ease. As they ran, Kane's grip tightened around the chip. This was the breakthrough she needed, but the Syndicate wouldn't let them escape easily. Their survival and humanity's depended on what happened next. The narrow alleys of Seraphon Prime's underbelly seemed to stretch endlessly, a maze of metal and shadow. Kane, Sato, and Tarek moved swiftly, their footsteps muffled by the damp, uneven ground. Behind them, the heavy thuds of Syndicate enforcers echoed, punctuated by the occasional crack of blaster fire. "This way," Tarek hissed, leading them through a rusted doorway into a dimly lit tunnel. The air was thick and metallic, the hum of ancient machinery vibrating beneath their feet. "How much farther?" Kane demanded, her voice barely above a whisper. "Not far," Tarek replied. "There's an old Syndicate safe house up ahead. It'll buy us some time." They emerged into a small, reinforced chamber. Tarek sealed the door behind them, locking it with a complex sequence on a control panel. "This should hold them for a while," he said, panting slightly. Kane wasted no time. She pulled out the data chip and handed it to Sato. "Can you decrypt this?" Sato nodded, already unpacking his portable decryption kit. "It'll take a few minutes, but I'll get it done." Tarek slumped against the wall, his iridescent scales dimming. "You don't know what you're up against, Kane. The Syndicate has its claws in every corner of the galaxy. They'll do whatever it takes to protect their interests." Kane fixed him with a cold stare. "Let them try. We're not walking away from this." Sato's device beeped, and a string of alien symbols flooded the small screen. His brow furrowed as he worked. "This encryption is tough, but got it." A series of communications played out in rapid succession. Holograms flickered to life, showing Syndicate leaders in shadowy council chambers. The voices were distorted, but one thing was clear: they had orchestrated the destruction of the Dravian artifact. One message stood out. A Zorthan operative spoke directly with an unidentified Union official. "The artifact's removal will destabilize the sector," the operative said. "When the chaos spreads, our fleets will move in. The humans will take the blame, and the Syndicate will control the trade routes." Kane's eyes narrowed. "That's it. This proves the Syndicate's involvement and implicates someone high up in the Union." Before they could celebrate, the sound of metal grinding against metal filled the room. The door buckled under the force of a battering ram. "They're here," Tarek growled, drawing his blaster. Kane turned to Sato. "Secure the data and get ready to move." The door burst open, and Syndicate enforcers poured in, their weapons blazing. Kane ducked behind a console, returning fire with precision. Tarek moved like a predator, his shots taking down enforcers with ruthless efficiency. Sato, clutching the decryption kit, shouted over the chaos. "We can't hold them off forever." Kane nodded. "We don't have to. We just need to get this evidence to the tribunal." She fired one last shot, then motioned to Tarek. "There's an emergency exit in the lower tunnels," Tarek said. "Follow me." As they retreated deeper into the labyrinth, Kane knew the battle was far from over. But for the first time, they had a weapon powerful enough to expose the truth and take down the ones who framed humanity. The emergency tunnels were narrow and damp, their walls lined with flickering luminescent panels that cast a cold greenish glow. Kane, Sato, and Tarek moved quickly, their breaths echoing in the confined space. Behind them, the distant clatter of Syndicate enforcers echoed louder with each passing moment. "They're not giving up," Sato panted, clutching the decryption kit like a lifeline. "We need to get this data to the tribunal before they catch us." Tarek led the way, his eyes scanning the tunnel ahead. "There's a transport conduit a few clicks from here. If we can reach it, we'll have a direct route to the surface spires." Kane's mind raced. Time was slipping through their fingers. The tribunal session was set to reconvene in less than an hour, and without the data, their case was dead on arrival. As they rounded a corner, the tunnel opened into a larger chamber filled with the hum of ancient machinery. A massive turbine spun slowly in the center, its blades slicing through thick clouds of steam. Tarek approached a control panel embedded in the wall. "This turbine powers an old cargo lift," he explained, tapping rapidly on the console. "I can get it running, but it'll make a lot of noise. They'll know exactly where we are." Kane nodded, gripping her sidearm tightly. "Do it. We'll hold them off." Tarek activated the lift, and the turbine roared to life. The chamber vibrated as the ancient machinery groaned into motion, the sound reverberating through the tunnels. Moments later, the first wave of Syndicate enforcers appeared, their red visors glowing ominously in the haze. Kane didn't hesitate. She fired with precision, each shot forcing their attackers to take cover. Tarek joined her, his blaster bolts lighting up the chamber. "Sato, get on that lift," he shouted. Sato scrambled onto the platform, frantically securing the decryption kit. "Hurry up," he called, his voice tinged with panic. Kane ducked behind a fallen beam as return fire peppered her cover. She glanced at Tarek. "We need to draw them away from the lift." Tarek smirked, his sharp teeth glinting. "I've got just the thing." He pulled a small device from his belt, a concussive grenade, and tossed it toward the enforcers. The explosion sent a shockwave through the chamber, scattering their ranks. "Go now," Tarek yelled. Kane sprinted toward the lift, firing over her shoulder as she ran. She dove onto the platform just as Tarek activated the controls. The lift began its ascent, rising swiftly through the shaft. Below them, the enforcers regrouped, firing wildly as they disappeared from view. As the lift neared the surface, Sato let out a shaky breath. "We made it, but they won't stop coming." Kane's jaw tightened. "They don't have to. Once we present this evidence, the Syndicate's grip will crumble." The platform slowed to a halt at the edge of the upper city, the spires of the tribunal gleaming ahead. The final confrontation was near. Humanity's defense and the truth rested in their hands. The spires of the tribunal loomed ahead, their crystalline surfaces reflecting the light of Seraphon Prime's distant star. Kane, Sato, and Tarek emerged from the lift into the bustling upper city. The atmosphere here was starkly different from the underbelly, clean, orderly, and filled with the hum of dignitaries preparing for the trial's next session. "We're cutting it close," Sato muttered, clutching the decryption kit. "The session starts in 20 minutes. Kane's eyes scanned the crowd. "We won't get another chance. We head straight for the chamber. No detours." Tarek pulled his hood up, his iridescent scales now muted. "The Syndicate will have agents here too. They'll try to stop us, but I've got a few tricks left." The trio moved swiftly, weaving through the crowd toward the grand entrance of the tribunal. Security was tight, with heavily armed guards stationed at every corner. As they approached the gates, a hulking alien guard, clad in ornate armor, stepped forward, blocking their path. "Ambassador Kane," the guard rumbled, his voice deep and mechanical. "You and your team are expected, but you'll need to surrender all devices for inspection." Kane's heart sank. If the decryption kit was confiscated, their evidence would never reach the tribunal in time. She glanced at Tarek, who gave her a subtle nod. "This evidence is critical to our defense," Kane said, her tone firm. "I'll take full responsibility, but it must remain with us." The guard hesitated, his visor scanning her for a long moment before stepping aside. "Proceed," he said, his voice laced with suspicion. Inside, the tribunal chamber was already filling with delegates. The massive amphitheater buzzed with anticipation, its tiered seats occupied by representatives from every corner of the galaxy. At the center, the High Arbitrator, Veitun, stood beneath a towering crystalline arch, his form radiating authority. Kane and her team hurried to their designated station. Zelthar, the prosecution's towering figure, watched them from across the chamber, his reptilian grin betraying his confidence. He gestured subtly to an aide, who slipped into the shadows. "They know we have something," Kane whispered to Sato. "Be ready for anything." The session began with a formal call to order. Veitun's voice resonated through the chamber. The tribunal reconvenes to determine the culpability of humanity in the destruction of the Dravian artifact. Ambassador Kane, the floor is yours. Kane stepped forward, her expression calm but resolute. Esteemed members of the tribunal, humanity has been falsely accused. We have uncovered evidence that not only exonerates us, but implicates those truly responsible. She signaled Sado, who activated the decryption kit. A massive hologram filled the chamber, displaying the intercepted communications between the Zorthan Syndicate and the unknown Union official. Gasps erupted from the audience as the damning messages played out. The destruction of the Dravian artifact was a calculated act, Kane continued. The Syndicate sought to destabilize galactic trade routes with the support of corrupt elements within the Union. Humanity was their scapegoat. Zelthar's smug grin faltered, but he quickly composed himself. These accusations are bold, but unproven. Who is this so-called Union conspirator? Before Kane could respond, Tarek stepped forward. I can answer that, he said, his voice echoing through the chamber. But I'll need the tribunal's protection. The Syndicate won't let this truth come out without a fight. Veitun regarded him carefully. You will have the tribunal's full protection. Proceed. Tarek took a deep breath. The Union conspirator is none other than. Before he could finish, a sudden explosion rocked the chamber. The lights flickered, and the crowd erupted in panic. Kane spun around, her instincts kicking in. The Syndicate wasn't done yet. The explosion shook the entire tribunal chamber, sending shockwaves through the massive amphitheater. The lights flickered, then sputtered out entirely, plunging the room into chaos. Shouts and cries of panic echoed as delegates scrambled for cover, and the air was filled with the acrid smell of smoke. Kane's heart raced. She had to stay focused. The Syndicate had clearly planned this. They wouldn't let the truth see the light of day, not when everything was on the line. Stay down, Kane yelled, pulling Sado and Tarek into cover behind a set of obsidian pillars. The holographic displays were short-circuiting, leaving only the faint glow of emergency lights. We need to finish this now, Sado shouted, clutching the decryption kit to his chest. The evidence is still intact, but we can't let them destroy it. Tarek was already moving, his sharp eyes scanning the room. I'll hold them off. You two get that evidence to the High Arbitrator. No, Kane snapped. You're not going alone. We need to get this information to the whole chamber, now. The ground rumbled beneath them as more explosions rocked the chamber's exterior, each one weakening the structure. Kane could see the Syndicate's enforcers, cloaked in shadows, slipping through the broken doors, weapons drawn and aimed at the fleeing delegates. Sado nodded. I can link the data to the tribunal central system. We just need a moment. Kane and Tarek moved swiftly, guns drawn, covering Sado as he worked. The enforcers were closing in fast. Kane fired a warning shot, forcing one of them to duck behind a fallen pillar. She gritted her teeth, feeling the pressure mounting. If they didn't get the data to Veitun soon, everything would be lost. I've got it, Sado said breathlessly, his hands flying over the device. He connected the encrypted data to the tribunal's mainframe, sending the intercepted communications out to every delegate and security officer in the room. A new hologram flickered into existence, displaying the damning evidence in real time. The recordings of the Zorthan Syndicate's covert plans played out again, louder this time, for all to hear. The audience gasped, the murmurs of disbelief growing louder as the truth spread like wildfire. Kane's eyes locked on Veitun, who stood on the raised platform at the center of the chamber, his gaze fixed on the hologram. The High Arbitrator's face remained unreadable, but Kane could see the shift in the atmosphere. The weight of the evidence was undeniable. What is this treason? Zelthar hissed from across the room, his voice trembling with panic. You forged these files. They are false, slander. The Syndicate enforcers hesitated, their hands faltering as they took in the data. Some of them looked uncertain, perhaps even guilty. Kane didn't wait. She stepped forward, her voice firm, her command unwavering. This is not slander. This is the truth. You have been played by the Syndicate, just as we were. The Dravian artifact was destroyed not by humanity, but by those who sought to manipulate this galaxy for their own gain. Wei Tun's gaze shifted to the remains of the Syndicate enforcers, his voice booming through the chamber. The evidence is clear. The tribunal will no longer tolerate corruption. The Syndicate's agents will be detained, and a full investigation will commence into the Union officials involved. Kane's breath caught in her chest as Wei Tun's gaze turned to her. Ambassador Kane of Earth, the tribunal hereby clears humanity of all charges. You are free to return to your people. For a long moment, Kane stood still, the weight of those words settling over her. The battle had been won, not just for humanity, but for the truth. As the chamber erupted into applause, Kane allowed herself a brief moment of relief, but she knew the fight wasn't over. The Syndicate's reach extended far beyond Seraphon Prime, and there would be more battles to fight. But for now, humanity had stood its ground, and that was a victory worth celebrating.